Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and we got some news regarding Biden basically saying, don't worry guys, inflation will be over soon enough. It's only temporary. Based on what information? Well, we don't exactly know, and we don't usually know what Biden's talking about regardless, but nonetheless, as this article out of Zero Hedge says, as Fed and Treasury spend $1.2 billion every hour, Biden says inflation is temporary, respects Fed quote unquote independence. Of course, what he's referring to there, and probably slipped up a little bit, is that the Federal Reserve is independent of the government, technically a private business. However, they basically tell the government what they're going to do when it comes to monetary policy, and they affect every single individual in the United States. When it comes to inflation, the hidden tax, which if everyone stops talking about wages and how they need a bigger wage, because no matter how much they raise a wage, it's still going to cost, they'll still be able to buy just as much, if not less. As we've seen since the 1960s, inflation has constantly been skyrocketing as the dollar constantly gets less and less valuable. We're supposed to hear now from Biden, who claims that this is all just temporary. Yeah, okay, well, I don't think it feels very temporary to all the people who are incredibly bankrupt right now. But let's just get into this article here. It says, there was a remarkable statistic in the latest Flow Show report from Bank of America's Michael Hartnett, according to the CIO's calculations. And I quote, the Fed is spending $336 million every 60 minutes buying bonds, while the U.S. federal government is spending $875 million every hour this year, a staggering amount made possible only by the recent merger between the Fed and Treasury, which ushered in not only helicopter money, but its socialist offshoot, MMT, modern monetary theory. It's also what so many monetarists argue is behind the recent surge in inflation, because Milton Friedman said best, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Now, first of all, I do want to point out this issue with bonds. The amount of money going into bonds right now is absolutely insanity. It is propping up the stock market artificially. You know, when will the SEC come in on the Fed and rein in the Fed's power, the dollar? Of course, that will not happen. It's all a giant collusion game meant to push everyone into debt dependency and basically extort everyone without even having to create a new tax. Inflation is the biggest tax people face, and people are paying off the interest on the debt right now. And why? Because they print money out of thin air and decrease the value of the currency. And then right now they're talking about raising interest rates, 3 times in 2023, possibly once in 2022. I think that's what you call going bankrupt. And of course, they always do that when they think we're going into a nice enough period of economic progress in order to be able to raise interest rates so they could drop it out later. Remember, between 2008 and 2012, they dropped interest rates 5.5%. As it continues here, it says, not so according to President Joe Biden, however, who on Monday said he believes the surge in U.S. inflation is temporary and that he has told Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell that he respects the central bank's independence, but he also emphasized that he wouldn't interfere with the central bank's policies. And I quote, as I made clear to Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve when we met recently, the Fed is independent. It should take whatever steps it deems necessary to support a strong and durable economic recovery. Well, okay, we've been talking about economic recovery since, let's see, way back at the creation of the Federal Reserve, 1913. I mean, seriously, when is this economic recovery happening? They just keep printing and devaluing the currency. And then they also printed the stock market endlessly, propping it up. And while the SEC goes after companies like Library for their Library coin and things like Ripple, they completely ignore the fact that they are literally propping up a fake stock market and manipulating markets on a daily basis, and no one's held accountable except for the individuals when they go and pay for their coffee, which is constantly going up in value because of the inflation and the constant printing. And you know, it makes sense that we hear stuff like this from Biden, because I mean, he's obviously completely delusional. He's obviously got some form of dementia. I think it's elderly abuse that he's even put in front of even a teleprompter. I doubt he can even read. You look at him squinting like that. But I mean, generally, what we're talking about here is much bigger than what a lot of people realize. Yet we hear these mainstream academics that constantly get proven wrong, saying things like hell isn't coming. With markets at record highs, contraindicator Bill Ackman now sees massive economic boom. In what world is he living in? Maybe you can prop it up for a year, maybe even 2 years. But what just happened in the last year equals complete bankruptcy, insolvency of millions of businesses across the board. All the small businesses have been crunched and pushed under water and drowned, while giant corporations have been able to be propped up. We will go into all that more in a moment, but first I want to ask everyone to go and check out our affiliate link, Richardson Nutritional Center, your source for Lyotril and vitamin B17, amygdalin, apricot seeds, made famous by G. Edward Griffin's book, World Without Cancer. You can go and get your capsules or your apricot seeds over at rncstore.com with our affiliate link below in the description. I appreciate everyone that helps us out in any way, keeps us alive, keeps you alive as well. Anyway, getting back to this, while we see stuff like this from these academics who literally are proven wrong day after day after day for a century, we have other things that are telling us, other people that are telling us that everything's just fine and dandy. NBER tells 14 million jobless Americans that the recession officially ended in April 2020, the shortest ever. First of all, the recession didn't even end after 2008. It's just been papered over. Second, we're literally going into negative interest rates. Third, people can't afford to pay for their home, for their food, for their electricity because of inflation. Oh, but we're on top of that, all the jobless numbers, but we're told that it ended in April 2020. Well, that's nice. Like, can we look at the chart here? Yeah. Does that look like the recession ended in April of 2020? Are you serious? It's hilarious. Like, it would be more hilarious if it wasn't so sad, because a lot of people are affected by this and insane amounts of people are unemployed right now. Meanwhile, we see information like this coming out. Home builder sentiment slumps to 11-month lows. Home buyer sentiment worst ever. I mean, and a big reason for the home builder sentiment slumping is because people started building a house and then suddenly lumber went up like a million times. And now the price of the building is like 10 times over the budget that they expected. And again, that's inflation, which again, going back, Biden says, oh, it's only temporary. It's only temporary. But here we are printing more money. Apparently, people are stupid enough to not understand how inflation is created in the first place. So we'll just say it's only temporary and respect the fact that the Fed overlords own us all. Meanwhile, no one can afford anything. That's great. Thanks. Continuing on, we see bond yields are puking again, and we have articles like this coming out. Inflation is starting to weigh on consumer confidence and spending. Well, yeah, a lot less people are going out and spending money because everything costs too damn much. No one has a job. Everyone's on welfare. And basically, there's no sign in the near future of things not being constantly shut down by a giant fascio-communist government combined with social credit scores that'll shut down your bank account. So yeah, there's a lot of loss in sentiment. Imagine that. And this is interesting because they will print into the markets, and if the markets keep going up, it is good for things like Bitcoin. But when they inevitably crash, it isn't good for a short period of time. But overall, what we do see is inflation is a good thing for Bitcoin, because first of all, just regarding the market cap and the amount in circulation, if the dollar is going down in value, it's without a doubt a good hedge against inflation. But also, when the dollar is printed into bonds, which goes into the stock market, then you end up devaluing the dollar more, and you just end up, if the dollar collapses, Bitcoin's going to do very well. And, we see things like El Salvador adopting Bitcoin right now. And I find this really interesting, not because I don't like the fact that a government's adopting Bitcoin at all. I don't think they should be releasing promissories, but what I do find interesting is that it helps adoption. And second of all, it also leads to countries not being beholden to the IMF or China with massive amounts of debt. So they're loaned money that they can't pay back, and then their resources are seized. So I think this is really interesting. I'm not happy about Bitcoin's price right now. I don't like it being 30,777. It's like, that's enough to drive me crazy. But I think it's actually good for Bitcoin in the long term. We needed that breather, and it happened between April or about May and late July of 2017 as well. Not that past indicators are indications of future, market cycles or moves, but nonetheless, I think that is very important to understand. These things happen, and people freak out, and they all sell low and buy high. And you should just do the opposite of sentiment, honestly. But when we see things like the inflation rate skyrocketing, the price of lumber skyrocketing, you have them printing all this currency, and then you have people like Biden saying, don't worry about it, it's only temporary. That's when everyone should start worrying and honestly get out of the dollar. And I honestly think that we have so many options more than ever now to hedge against the dollar and preserve our wealth, whether it be gold or silver, or even in a one way speculate on something that is being vastly adopted worldwide, like cryptocurrency, that's decentralized and fundamentally useful. And I think the privacy coins are going to explode in value, mostly because because people need to escape the vast surveillance state that we live in today. And obviously the control of money via digital technology via the hands of banks and governments around the world. That's a so-called cashless society and technocracy. We have an opportunity here, my friends, to break out of this system. So, okay, ignore what Biden's saying. No one actually believes that he's setting policy. No one actually believes that he actually has any thoughts of his own. Same with Justin Trudeau in Canada and elsewhere around the world. Because, I mean, have you looked at the guy recently? Guy is decrepit and incredibly stupid. So there's no way he's sitting down writing policies. And it's more evidence than ever that these people are puppets. And puppets to whom? Well, a giant global banking system. And we could talk about the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which we have many times before. We could talk about the World Bank, and we could talk about the ECB, et cetera. But the point is, they've been long ago, they were talking about doing bail-in regimes and basically cashing out people's bank accounts. They've already done it in many countries, and it was in Canadian budget law back in 2015, which we reported on at the time. As this continues to happen, and we have people like Mario Draghi, who's now the Prime Minister of Italy, saying things like he wants to end depositor insurance, which, by the way, is already extremely low, and based on banks that their cash to deposit ratio in many cases is under 1%, basically bankrupt. We need to get out of the dollar. We need to get out of the world currencies. We need to get out of the yuan. We need to get out of all these massive global currencies as they get ready for the Great Reset 2025, where they move into a vast monetary overhaul, where we could see SDR, like the special drawing rights at the IMF, being used as the global standard with the yuan, and digitally, of course, for the elites, and then peasant change with massive inflation for the peasants, which then will crush us even further. We need to be prepared. We need to be out of that system. And when it comes to vaccines and vaccine passports as well, if you don't want, to get injected with government juice, you might want to have an option to get out of the bank, because they will just shut down your bank account eventually if you don't get it. And that will lead into vast starvation. We can see climate lockdowns on the horizon. We can see grid failure. We could see supply chain breakdown. And then that all works into the United Nations Agenda 2030, which talks about depopulating the world. Now, you could call that conspiracy theory, but this is what they themselves are saying. And it would be smart to heed the caution and heed the warnings and defend yourself monetarily with gold, silver, cryptocurrencies that are properly fundamentally useful and decentralized, as well as food, water, shelter, and self-defense, which is extremely important going forward and always has been. So regardless of what these maniacs say on TV or say in their press conferences, regardless of, Janet Yellen's recent comments, Ben Bernanke's recent comments, and where he said we should stop calling the dollar fiat, because, he's noticing people are starting to wake up. And regardless of Jerome Powell's fascio-communist statements, I think it's time now more than ever to break out of the old guard and into the new. So, we have the old guard, which will feed into a part of the new guard, but not necessarily if we break out of it the right way. But like the cashless society based on social credit scores, vaccine passports that we see in China, instead of moving into that, we have that on the evil hand. We have on the good hand decentralized cashless systems that actually overhaul that system and replace the old guard with the new guard via the demand of the individual, no government intrusion at all. They will try to attack it. They will try to bring it down. They will fail eventually. And the best thing they could possibly do right now is just get on board. But of course, they'll try whatever they can to struggle to stay alive with the old guard system. But as inflation skyrockets and every single individual is affected by it, and everyone is affected by it, and everyone is paying off the interest on the debt if you pay taxes at the same time, it's going to be detrimental to everyone who stays in any of these major fiat currencies. Imagine you get $100 an hour raise and you buy less than you did when it was $100 an hour less. That is the future we can look forward to if we don't heed the caution and get out soon. The biggest evil we face in the world is inflation, and it's done by people who know that most people are going to be too bored by the by the economic situation. They don't want to actually look into economics. They don't want to actually look into the monetary system because it sounds dry as hell, right? And so they don't. And so what happens next? Everyone is enslaved by debt. A public that is in debt is dependent, and a public that's dependent on the state is a public that is in servitude. The government depends on the dependence of the masses after all. As always, my friends, live freely, live by example, disobey, break free, decentralize, and look for ways to keep yourself privacy oriented, whether it be on your phone, whether it be with currency like Pirate Chain or Monero, whether it be just removing yourself from the system, living off grid, whatever it might be. We are in for one hell of a show in the next 5 to 10 years, and everyone should be prepared in every single way. You need to cover all angles. Anyway, I appreciate everyone watching. Make sure to check our links below. Join our Telegram group, World Alternative Media, our newsletter, www.iamband.com. Takes 2 seconds to just put your email in there. It helps a lot. And of course, go and get your Lytril or vitamin B17, your amygdalin, your apricot seeds at rncstore.com with our affiliate link below. There's so many studies that go back decades that show evidence that it not only stops you from getting cancer, but could possibly even cure cancer. I think it's a good bet that the reason the establishment has gone after this product so much, but hasn't been able to stop it, is because there is truth to these studies and there is abundant science to back it up. And of course, it was made famous by G. Edward Griffin's book, World Without Cancer. So go and get your supplements over at rncstore.com, linked below in the description of this video. Of course, you can go and join our, well, I already went over the newsletter, I guess. I got like no sleep last night. Of course, you can go find us on BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. You can also join us on Hive and Steam It at Josh Sigurdson, as well as on the Bad Guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter, World Alt Media. You can help support us by going to GOGETFUNDING.com, Patreon, Subscribestar, our PayPal. We have a Teespring store where you can buy our merchandise. And of course, you can donate in Bitcoin. There's a Bitcoin address below, as well as our Cointree link below, which you can click on. And it'll bring you to a page with a whole bunch of different cryptocurrencies, including Monero and Pirate Chain, if you want to donate privately. We truly appreciate it, my friends. And as always, stand up for yourself, live freely and independently, and check those links below. We'll be back at you with much more soon when I get some coffee in me and I wake up. But one thing we do know is that inflation isn't going away anytime soon. It's far from temporary, and we need to get prepared. So thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.